And then they look at and then he was the mystery ritual. You could have. But now. We have a complete record. Required $1. Ken Powell will be proud. I was called, but it's so busy. I put in yes, and my volunteer.
Would you like
The thing about your office is read the booklet.
I really can't.
It's almost ready to be read. I'm going through it right now. Electronic. With a red pencil.
I'll print it off the market because that's the way my brain is better.
I mean, With the timeline, we've got to move very quickly because it's got to go to the printer. I late last week of July. I will, when I get done and I get my editing organized, I'll tip it off to you, or if it's on the drive, it's going to be on the drive.
So you started at the beginning, right? And you're some way through. I could hypothetically follow behind you.
Yeah. I'm not that far. I just started today. No, it's not. But I've spent 2 8-hour days. I'm happy.
Yeah. Well, it's self-efficacy. It's like great because you get the pleasure of knowing you made 11 and it's really happy.
Well,
I'll do my bit for the 500 I've got.
I'm anxious to see the writer's reaction. The writer's reaction to the elimination of cookies.
Next year?
Yep, this year's 23.
Oh, we're not having cookies.
We're going to have cookies.
Yeah.
But we're not having a bigger whoop-de-doo cookie stuff.
I never understood that. Sorry, I don't get the lore behind cookies.
I'll tell you the story about it. Very entertaining. But these are short.
And Patrick owes me a beer for the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't see you. So I'm going to have some spare.
Okay.
It doesn't.
It was raining.
And with the weapon at the other end of the police cells, I said, those are the guys. Because hypothetically, it was great if there was one in the upgrade.
I know. I don't know.
I like when I leave because I'm driving.
The next week.
So
It's
get your equals. Yeah. And when I worked for well, he was like full threats. I was God, yeah, that's a question. Yeah, I heard people die. He's not taking part.
So how many? I don't. Just tell me to move. Boy, those are nice pictures. Hey.
Okay, good evening.
So awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm the designated master of ceremonies because nobody else wanted to do it. No, my high school debate came and really handled it. But anyway, my name is Mike Unsworth. I'm on the TCBA Advocacy Committee. I want to apologize for the cramped conditions. We really didn't know how many people were going to show up. And if anybody's tried to plan an event, it's kind of crazy because all the venues want tons of money. Yep. And I will jump real quick. Where's Herr Lindenmeyer at? Okay, we are here. This is the headquarters of the League of Michigan Bicyclists. And John Lindenmeyer, who is the long-serving head of the league, he let us have this, and he also lets us have this for our advocacy committee meetings once a month. I appreciate your patience. What I want to remind you now is let's silence our phones, because everybody has cute ringtones these days. And logistics, you know where the munchies are. The one restroom is to the left by the guy in blue. Go in that room and it's to the left. And okay. Now I'm going to give some thanks to people who helped with this. And so when I say your name, can you raise your hand? Chantel Esch. Okay. She is Lenny's daughter. Joanne Preventure, she is Lenny's paramour and all kind of wonderful things. Did you raise your hand, Joanne? Very good. Okay, okay, I introduce Mr. Lindenmeyer. TCBA Advocacy Committee, like I said, we meet here once a month. They helped me a lot with this. Diane Tweedy, she brought the red rosé wine. Pat Harrington, he bought a lot of the munchies and some of the cups and whatnot. Dan Stockwell made a run to Eagle Muck Brewery, especially for us. Tim Potter has been keeping me posted on a variety of things. Raise your hand, Tim. He runs the MSU bikes. Oh yeah, Mr. Stockwell's retired, Diana's retired, Pat is retired. And then we have Robin Barfoot, who is somehow connected with this Mr. Harrington, the reprobate. Sorry. So they helped a lot with this. Here's the format of tonight. It's very informal. I would like people to give short talks, about 3 minutes, on an aspect of Lenny's life. And the order will be first the family, Chantel and Joanna, and John Lindenmeyer, and then myself, and then it'll be what I would, since we don't have one, I'm still going to call it open mic, and people get up. Now, I'm going to be taking notes. Dan, we're recording this too, right? Yes. And I'll merge everything together, and there'll be a write-up in the TCBA newsletter, and we hope to get TCBA to put up a memorial page for Lenny. So, okay, Chantel, why don't you go first, please? You can. It'd probably be better to stand because we've been here. You better.
So there's something I would like to share with you guys. When going in Dad's house, I was going through many letters and I found this letter. I'd never seen this letter before. My aunt was there and many others, and it made me cry really hard. I've never cried so hard in my life. So I want to share this with you guys. It says, Chantel, belated happy Valentine's Day. I love you very much. I'm extremely proud of you. You definitely have had your head together. I think you have inherited your strong work ethic from your paternal side of your family. Example, my dad, me, Lori, and Leon. I failed you early in your life, but have tried to do better since then. I haven't given you much maternally, but tried to be an example by working hard and consistently. I also haven't had a father-daughter talk with you, but will, when we get together, I do not have all the answers for the wealth of experience to share by talking with you. You're starting to catch up to me age-wise now. I met you when you were 10 years old. I was 40 years old. Now you're nearly 30 years old. I'm a little over 60 years old now, twice your age, so we can talk as adults, not father to child. Love your daddy, Lenny. I also found he worked for the government, and I found his 37 years of loyal service.
Wow.
And I want to share everybody with. He was very dedicated in everything he did. He helped so many people. He helped so many people, and I'm so proud. And I decided a while ago that I'm gonna do in his honor and help all the people that I can for the rest of my life as well. Thank you.
Wow.
Thanks, Chantel. Okay, Joanne? Joanne, you want to say something?
I would like to say, first of all, Chantel, that was a wonderful tribute. That was a wonderful tribute, and we did love you very much. He said, I remember when we first met. I remember I was there, and so I'm very glad that you gave that tribute and have so much, not so much in your memories. My experience with Lenny was an on and off experience. He and I were married, and then we were divorced, and then we became good friends. And friendship was unusual for a lot of people because usually you know couples like that who become friends after they're married, and some of them never become friends. So we were friends, and we had a lot of times together. One of the experiences was weekends. This was when Lenny's legs were really bad. He couldn't get around very easily at all, and he would not have surgery. I wanted him to have surgery. He would not have surgery, and that was because a friend had died during surgery, and another friend had died after knee surgery, and so he had that on his mind. And so I had to just stop asking him because he could not want surgery. So we got together on Saturday night, Saturday and Sunday night, and he would go to the different stores like the Chinese place or a pizza place. And on one night we had Chinese, and the other night we had pizza, and we watched favorite TV shows until about 11 or 11:30 when I could kick him out. Because he'd say, I'm going to stay for the next one. And I'd say, no, you're not. Get up. And he'd keep me off, push out the door. And then he said, after many times of this, he said, you know what? I think you should start getting the food. And I said, oh, okay, I'll get the food. And you clean up and get everything set up for us. You get into my cupboards and you get all the dishes out that we have to have. And then after we're done with eating, you clean up the place and put it all back. And he said, you know what? I'll get the food. And so that's what we did. And we went to Cracker Barrel on Thursday nights. And anyway, we just did those kinds of things together. And I miss him dearly. And this brings it all back. I was just getting to the point of where I was sleeping all night. And it all came back because I had to have all those memories again. And I will have them forever. But thank you very much for having this celebration. Thank Tim and the people who are fronting this out for us. Thank you very much.
Hey, John?
Ian, phone.
Ah. All right. That's good. Okay, I'll start out with the personal ones. I appreciate if people would keep it to about 3 minutes. I might be a little longer.
Did I go over?
No, I wasn't talking to you.
Yeah, John.
Oh, okay, John, let her rip. I mean, you want to say something about Leonard?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, thank you all for coming. I've been with the League of Michigan Bicyclists for almost 20 years now, which is wild to think, but Lenny was one of the first people I think I met, and there's a handful of other folks that were part of that initial crew that I met when I started with the organization. And what I want to say about Lenny is he was always incredibly generous with his time and his resources. So from the early days, I remember him always volunteering, whether it was with valet bike parking or helping out with the Smart Commute project that was happening here, or he was always one of the first people to register for our advocacy day and came down to the Capitol to speak with his representatives and senators to help advance our bicycle advocacy efforts. And he was always one of the first people to donate when we have a campaign. So he was an incredible presence, and I was honored to get to know him over the years. And back in 2019, at one of the TCA meetings, we were honored to recognize him with the Bob Gibb Passion for Pedaling Award. It's an award we give out once a year to a very special bicyclist and somebody who just has that. Oh, there's a photo of us in our matching plaids that night. That's the other thing I remember about Lenny. A band of mini plaids. And so we were honored to recognize him during that event. And so I'll yield my time. I think other folks probably know him even more intimately than I did, but I was glad that he was part of my life.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Bauman, can you place yourself, please? Okay. Let's try the board.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, we've had 3 people talk, and they probably talk about 4 of Lenny's activities. One thing I think a lot of you won't know, that he was a proud Marine.
We knew that.
3 members of my family are Marines, and none are prouder than Leonard on that. He wasn't boisterous, but he liked his time in the Corps. Now I'm going to share some Lenny humor. We have a physicist here to help me with a formula. Can you put?
You didn't say that.
All right, a simple formula. Can you put n plus 1, or put equals? Equals, and then n plus 1. And on the left side of the equation, you don't have to write this, but this is Lenny's formula for determining the optimal number of bikes a person can have. N is the number of bikes that you already have. So you need 1 more for the perfect number. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, and I think Lenny coined this. What do weekends mean for retired people?
Nothing.
No doctor appointments. So whoever wants to say something, go ahead. Oh, by the way, Lenny was a mechanic in the Marines. He's what's called an air wing Marine. He worked on the engines of A4 Skyhawks. And he extended his time in the Corps because his squadron was going on an aircraft carrier to the Mediterranean. That's the insignia. That's Marine Attack Squadron 331. And so he was in the Med. I don't know what year that was. But it was, oh yeah, well, the reason that Lenny was in the Marines was that he was in the MSU for a while. And then MSU thought he wasn't pulling his weight, so he decided he would go into the Marines and pulled his weight, and then he came back to MSU and got his degree. So, yeah. So anyway, you're standing up, Mr. Bauman. Why don't you say something?
Well, when I was a kid, which is not too long ago, I had actually a plastic model of an A4 Skyhawk. So that's interesting. Yeah. I know Lenny. I don't know him, didn't know him too well, but I know him from riding Denmark bike rides, which I've been doing ever since I moved to Michigan. And
when was that?
Well, I did my first Denmark in 1994, and I was a student here. And I said, just for that bike ride, I have to come back here. And I did in 1999, and I did it every year since, except 2020. And so it seemed like every Denmark bike ride, Lenny was there. So that's where I know Lenny. Most of my times I encountered him was on Denmark. And my wife even met him, and she was volunteering for one of the earlier Denmarks in the early 2000s. She was helping out with registration, and Lenny was there, so she knew him as well. And we would, of course, meet him on the, on the streets, riding bikes oftentimes, and at the Bike Advocacy Day, at the TCBA meetings, everything that was biking. From my perspective here, Lenny was there. He was always there, and it's probably missed.
Thanks. I'm just going to let people volunteer.
He was also a mainstay in the wine tasting community. He took wine tasting classes from my husband and was at most of the wine tastings. And I understand he has an extensive collection that he left to you, which is a lucky lead. And we always appreciated his insight.
Thank you.
I met Lenny at the advocacy committee the first time that I attended the advocacy committee. Lenny was there, and he was a very cordial and welcoming person. I had the pleasure of riding with him on a t-shirt ride, and we pedaled along together for a while. He was, I think, close to giving up a lot of intense riding. But I think the most impressive thing about Lenny is all of these people gathered who he touched in his life. And we should all be as lucky to have a gathering like this to celebrate our lives.
My wife and I first met when through the 6 a.m. bike rides. I know that seems horrendous to people, but he had a day job. But I'm going to read, this is a note I sent to Joanne. When Lenny died, I was at Henry Ford Hospital in Tacoma. So I didn't know about Lenny. This is what I wrote to Joanne. I was 2 days ago. And that's when my wife started this email address on a note I was writing. And she wisely decided to wait to inform me, since I was just coming out of torturous ICU and ventilator experience. I wept as she told me. There were tears of loss, but also tears of gratitude over some of the many things he taught me, from tidbits about the 10-pound fiddle sound system. We worked with Mino on that for a while. The bike maintenance, the respect for our tools, and how the journey often matters more than the destination. We will eat a high tribute to Lenny later and talk more when I'm able to talk intelligently.
You tell the pie story.
Okay. So we visited Lenny. He was at Bertram Hills, and he was upset because they ran out of pie at lunchtime. Not just peach pie, which is his favorite, but all pie. So next time I was going to come over to visit, I stopped at Grand Traverse Pie Company. And lo and behold, I was told pizzas were out of season, and they didn't make peach pie much because customers didn't like it. So we're going to have a separate pie tribute. It may not be peach pie, but for the living, we get to choose.
Can you identify yourself, please?
Bill Smith. I started riding, I rode with the club back in the late 70s and early 80s, and then I had to quit because my wife was, had to be a caregiver. And after she died, I started riding again with the club, and so I met Lenny and Wendell, and a bunch of others, and I bought my first touring bike, and I went on a few overnights with the club on Sunday tour, and Lenny was really a huge help. Just doing a lot of things. Very companionable. We ride along at the miles, which you see so fast. And then, like Lenny, I have prostate cancer. He gave me a lot of advice and just pep talks, and so I've been fighting that battle. But he was a big help to me, and I'm really sorry that he's gone.
Thanks. My name is Richard Lake. I got a bum hip. I do not ride a bicycle. I mean, I had one when I was a kid. But I know Lenny loved riding this bike. Every time we saw him, he'd talk about his trips up to Traverse City with you guys and all this stuff, But I've known Lenny for about 50 years. He came to my wife Diane and I's wedding just over 50 years ago. And what did him and all my friends go together and get us? Bicycles. Yeah, bicycles. I'm sure he had something to do with that. Okay. Yeah, I had a group of pretty close 4 friends from high school, and a couple of us served in the service after high school. Got out in the early 70s, and we got to know Lenny because Lenny was almost family to me because he married his brother married one of my cousins. And they happened to move into a dumpy place called Arden Manor. Now back then it was, I think, $100 a month rent. And it included heat. That's where my sister and her husband lived too. So Lenny lived there, my cousin lived there. We'd be there, we'd be playing cards till late at night. He liked that. My brother-in-law had a cottage up in Saginaw Bay. I don't know if he ever told you guys about it, but we'd have pretty big parties up there. I have a big family. I had 5 brothers and sisters. They all had kids, so we'd go up there. Over the last few years before my brother-in-law died, the whole family would come. All the nieces and nephews. There'd be tents all over the place. Lenny would show up with his little tent and his sleeping bag and his bicycle, and he was out riding his bicycle. But he loved going up there. He loved the family. He knew all my brothers and sisters, and he knew all their kids too growing up. And somehow they all ended up with pumpkins from Michigan State for Halloween. I don't know if he stole pumpkins or what. Yeah, and I was watching the show the other night. The classic cars of the classic car era, and it talked about Detroit. And there was a segment in there that really got to me. They had a segment of these 3 guys. They were all serving in the service. A lot of them went to Nam and stuff. And it's they showed their car right after they got out of the war. Beautiful, beautiful. Like old Cutlass convertible. They show these 3 guys riding around. And then they show the Woodward Green Cruise the last couple of years. These same 3 guys, now they're a little older. They got to pick one guy up from the nursing home and help him in the back of the car and put the top down and cruise Woodward. I did that with my friend Bob No, who had a 59 Merc. Lenny would come down, he would go. My friend Kurt would come down, he would go. And all of us were in the service. I saw that, and I told my wife, I said, God damn, that's me, Kurt, Lenny, and Bob. Cruising Woodward in his old car. It was just so neat. So we loved Lenny a lot. He'd come down to our house once or twice a year when we get, I stayed friends with all these guys from high school. And I still see him, except, we lost another one. Bob No passed away a little over a year ago. Good friend of Lenny's. Now Lenny's gone. And it's, it's still kind of surreal because I saw him, he had a stroke. He was in the hospital. So I got with Kurt, another guy, Chris, we came up here, talked to him. And obviously he wasn't very happy. He just kept saying, I don't know. I don't think I can go home. And that hurt because I know how much he loved riding his bike. And he had to give that up the last couple of years too. He liked to come down to the art fair in Ann Arbor too. And we'd all get together there and go to a nice expensive dinner, And Lenny would give his envelope out of his pocket. Get his money out. Yeah, he'd come to our house a couple of times a year, and early on, he always brought a good bottle of wine. He liked wine, and he would make a cheesecake. Okay, he brought a cheesecake, and it was very good. It was really good. So, like I said, my wife and I have known Lenny for over 50 years. It's good. It does my heart good to see that he had this many friends in a bicycling community. And Joanne, we were at your wedding too. Good to see you. Thank you.
I'll jump up. My name is Pat Harrington. I look at Lenny as one of the best personalities that I'll ever know. I met him about 20 some years ago when the director of the League of Michigan Bicyclists, Lucinda, took Phil's earlobe and my earlobe and explained what a good idea we were having. And valet bicycle parking was born. And Lenny came over to the house to drill holes in 2x4s. Okay? And I'm kind of the guy that just jams it through. And Lenny was measuring 3 times both sides using a square and a level. So it's like, we'll step back, take a support roll here. And he organized Ride of Silence, which is it's a very unselfish thing to do. It's an event that happens all over the globe. Tim is actually the webmaster for the planet on that. But I saw Lenny get really pissed off once. And he came up to me in Delmac, and Robin and I were the ride leaders, and here comes Lenny. And he is mad and his eyes are red. And it was like, this is not good because that guy does not get mad. But he was mad on behalf of others. There's 400 people, and Lenny looked at the map, and there was not going to be any food for a long way tomorrow. And he said, where is the map maker? And it was like, glad you're not coming for me. Take phones. And then where that ended up is there's a perfect place just up the road from the Lake City campground. And they are about to do their 15th annual Leonard Provencher pie stop. Because they said, yeah, what do we feed these bikers? And it's pie. And they have served 812 pies. So they're doing about 70 or 80 a year. Wow. Which would take 2 or 3 of these tables of just pies from the church people are making them. The first couple of years, as a joke, we called it the Leonard Provencher Memorial Pie Stop. And he was like, I'm not dead yet. So it's like, okay. So, and then over the last couple of years, there wasn't room in the map to print the entire title. And then our director has put it back in. It's a permanent, it's the Leonard Provencher Memorial Pie Stop at the East Boardman Bible Community Church. And we're hoping to hit the 900th pie this year. So it was first in Lenny's name. Thank you.
Let's stop on down.
Okay, I'm gonna have to start telling you.
I'm Robin, I'm his wife. Clean up a few things on that pie stop story. Lenny, it was a stretch of about 40 miles and there was a good one name. No food, no water, no bathrooms, no nothing. And Lenny was rightfully ticked about that, which prompted, we better do something. So we jump in the car and we drive the route and there's nothing. But we see there's a church with this big empty parking lot in a good spot, about maybe halfway. So we said, this is going to be the place. And in the morning, we grabbed a couple of volunteers and some tables and some water jugs and some cookies and some bananas that we stole from somebody else's pie stuff, you know, another ride stuff. We just took it. And we leave these people in the parking lot with the stuff. And we had one of those water keys. So we poached water from the church so people could fill their water bottles. And there was a nice little woods there. And so people were running into the woods. And the next year in about March, he went to the church board and said, do you mind if we use your parking lot to put some bathrooms in? And here's an opportunity for you to make some money by having stuff for the bikers to buy. And based on what he knew about Lenny and pies, he said, and probably pies would go over real big. And so the first year, and it was a 2-day, we went through on one day and the next day, a 4-day route went through. And that first year that they did the pie stop, we stopped and there's bikers everywhere. And Lenny was there eating pie. And when Patrick called that night to see how things went, the church lady said, well, they ate everything for both days today. Because these people had no idea how bikers ate. And so they had to all rush home and make more sandwiches and cook more pies. So they had stuff for the people the next day. And after Lenny objected to us calling it the Memorial Pie Stop while he was alive, we were calling it the Honorary Pie Stop. But now they went back to, sadly, Memorial. But yeah, Lenny was pretty happy with it when it turned into a real stop, because that was the ride that he always took, and they had good things that he liked. And he actually talked to the lady and they counted pies. He didn't just make that number up. She helped him estimate how many pies they made. Wow. So that will be there for a tribute to Lenny for a while. And it's the least of what he deserves.
Thanks, Robert.
So I'm Tim Potter, as was mentioned before. I did a lot of riding with Lenny, but I wanted to, I really didn't want to say anything because I can't, it's hard for me to control my emotions, but he was very much involved in biking in a high level that some of you may not know, and I don't know if I have the pictures of him, but let me see if I can.
Who's in that picture? Does anybody know?
Yes, that's Dad's Marine friend. He's supposed to be on the Zoom right now. Bill Johnson.
Good.
Oh.
So I wanted to just talk about Lenny's officiating in the bike world at a very, very high level. So I didn't meet Lenny at this event, but I was at this event in April of 1980 at MSU. He officiated, this was his first time officiating the bike race at the board track races at MSU. And this was my first experience riding a track. So it was really unfortunate that I didn't get to meet Lenny here, but we were in the same building. That was 43 years ago. He went on to officiate from here at the world-class level. So he's told me a lot of stories about officiating, you know, with some very famous people. He had this part of his face from the mustache on down holding up like Greg LeMond and Bernard Hinault and those guys in the Worlds in 1986. So he's just he's like a father to me. So
Thanks, Tim.
thanks, Tim.
I would go next. I'm Jethro White. I knew Lenny for probably the first year I did Dalmac, 02. And I remember one time on the t-shirt right, a guy had a problem with his chain. Lenny came up and took care of it and got him back on the road. And I remember that the best.
I'm Hannah Mangas. When I was a student at MSU, on the MSU cycling team, he was on the MSU cycling team. And I remember we somehow we finagled our way into the field house at MSU at night on our track bikes, and we used the track, the outside of the basketball court.
Jenison.
Yeah, Jenison. And
I think a lot of people did that, Hano, because I remember a lot of people going over to that bike track.
I wasn't a bike track.
Oh,
Well, it was the running track.
We somehow official relationship between that night. That's what happened in this story.
Photo that's up there. The gentleman on the left is Bob Gibbs, who Lenny pushed through. I don't think it took too much problem with LMV. The Bob Gibbs, what was it, Joy of Cycling Award?
Passion for
Passion, yeah. Bob would not only go to bike tours, he would bike to bike tours. And he had a little Beagle, and on the back of his trailer was a board, and the Beagle would kind of surf while Bob is riding on that. And Bob and Lenny were not good friends. They were excellent friends. And Bob's last years were spent up north Traverse City area, Tim. And at least twice a year, Lenny would go out with other people and hang around with Bob. And he lived up to 100.
Just before his 101st birthday.
101st, yeah. So, you know, those are two excellent cyclists who are no longer with us, but they've made a great impact.
Didn't Lenny ride with them on the last Dalmac that Bob did in tandem?
Did Palm.
Well, that was on top, right?
Yeah. Describe what Palm is, Tim.
Pedal across Lower Michigan.
Yeah. Is that a one? That's what, 3 days, 4 days?
5 days.
5 days.
Yeah. And Lenny and Bob and I also did the Lake Pepin tour. It's America's first lead ride. That's in here somewhere.
We dressed up in old clothes with full bikes, and
so we rode 3-speed bikes in vintage clothing around Lake Pepin, which is just south of Minneapolis. And if you want to contribute photos to this album, you can email them to Mike and Scott.
That's awesome.
We dressed up British as best we could.
Notice Lenny, Bob, and are you wearing knickers too, Tim?
Yes.
They're all three wearing knickers. And one time somebody asked Lenny what a tweed white was, which Tim just said, oh, we get into old clothes and roll like.
Yeah.
He would give you a dissertation worth of information. Well, it goes back to Britain between the world wars and the working class. That was their way of getting around. They couldn't afford cars, and they would put on their finest clothes and pedal across England and Scotland and wherever in the UK. And I'm just thinking, I'm supposed to be the history nut, and he has it totally inculcated. Yeah.
So you watched Grumpy Old Men movie.
Yeah.
As we were traveling to this event, we were joking about it because we were three grumpy old men. And as we rolled into Wabash, there's a sign there. This is home of the filming of Grumpy Old Men. Yeah, that was quite a trip. He told me a story about, any of you remember Rebecca Twigg? If you were into bike racing back in the 80s, she was top level bike racer. After the races, they had to get urine samples for testing. Actually, this isn't. So he had to do that for all the top level racers, and he had to monitor them until they gave the urine samples and so that they couldn't cheat. This is more of a sort of, he told us actually about a young man who just it was such a long, hot race that he couldn't pee, and so they just waited and waited, and they tried giving him beer, they tried giving him water, they finally got the idea of having him stand near a fire hydrant and open the fire hydrant up. The kid had finally peed. So that's pretty hilarious. You want to Lenny's bike racing stories. Yeah, you got to experience it at the very top.
Wow.
And he also took copious notes during that tour. That's what he's doing there. He's taking some notes of the ride around Lake Pepin.
Yeah, it's too bad he really didn't do much on Facebook because of all those notes. But I don't know if you ever went to his Facebook page. It said he lived in a Qualalut, Inuit, Canada, which is the furthermost Canadian territory, because he didn't want people to bug him.
Yeah. Yeah. He used a photo of himself that I took below the waist, just to his legs. Yeah. So send any photos you'd like to me or to Lenny, and it might of Lenny to Mike, please, and we can add them here.
These will be the memorial pictures.
Yeah.
Shannon, I'm glad you could make it. You said you met Lenny at Dolmac?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you introduce yourself? Sure, why not?
I wasn't gonna say anything, but because I'm like some emotional. My name's Shannon Branchner, and I'm probably met Lenny about the same time as Pat. My first down back was 2000, and I lived in Texas at the time. I'm the Texas Turtle, long way back. Even slower now, but I knew Lenny as a SAG because I never knew him as a biker racer, but I knew he had to be serious. And I normally can tell if somebody's friendly or not. And Lenny, I think, had approached that grumpy old man stage because all I heard was, I'm like, so I really tread lightly around Lenny, but it didn't take me long to figure out his approval, his passion for bikes, and his respect for me after about 100 or 200 miles. And I knew he was friendly when he said, why are you riding so fast? You know, the first ones in get to unload the trucks. Got it. You're my friend. So, you know, it had been so long since I'd done a Delmac, and my brother Bob rides, and I said, hey, is Lenny still out there? Oh, yeah, Lenny's around. And then I volunteered a couple of years ago for a straight and I was so happy to see Lenny, and he remembered me. And oh, yeah, how you doing? So it was good to see him a couple of years back, and but I knew this day had to come. So,
okay. Sorry for putting you on the spot. Great contribution.
Lenny was awesome. That's all I can say.
I have a letter. Has everyone done the everyone?
I think we'll keep going as long as you want, but why don't you say the letter, please?
Okay, I'll read this real quickly. I don't know if any of you knew Jackie Payne and Bill Payne, but that goes way back to Lenny. And she wrote me and she said, one of my favorite memories of Lenny was about 10 years ago, when he had a big tree down in his backyard that was good firewood. He cut up. He asked Bill if he wanted it. We had a wood burning fireplace. Bill and I went over with our truck and a chainsaw, and the guys went to work on it. It was pretty useless other than hauling brush. It was a big job. It may have taken more than a day, but when it was done, Bill and I had firewood for years. Of course, Lenny didn't want any money for it. In the cause of wandering about in Lenny's yard, I admired a plant, bloodroot, which I had not seen before. Lenny dug some up and gave it to me. It's still growing in my back raised bed, which Lenny helped to build and will bloom. Lenny was a good guy. I'm glad that he and Bill were friends, and I got to be his friend too. His cheesecake set the bar for me, which no cheesecake has yet to make. I was glad that we would stay together. But anyway, this guy was generous. That's all I can say. He gave all the time. And he was so smart. He made me mad because he was so smart. The only thing he wasn't smart about was my favorite musician is Roy Orbison. And Lenny said he's blind. And I said, no, he's not blind. He just wears those glasses. And we argued about that.
Joanne, didn't you meet Lenny at the 10-pound fiddle? Didn't you meet Lenny at the 10-pound fiddle?
Oh, yes, he brought me a cup of tea recording.
Oh.
and then I started looking at houses and I said, when do you want to look? Because I know you like houses. And so we started looking and then suddenly we were engaged. And we looked at over 60 houses and didn't agree on one. First clue. I didn't pay any attention to it. Then we finally agreed on 3 and we had to vote. 2 out of 1. 2-1. So anyway, it was a struggle. I should have learned something way back, but he was really, yeah, he could fix anything that's broke, he could fix it. And so, you know, I think most of you know that. We had a lot of help along the way. Thank you for listening.
Anybody else?
I just wanted to make a remark. I'm listening to everybody with their stories, and there were an awful lot of facets to Lenny that were mostly the bike people here. And I was talking with Ann, who I know through cycling and is a cyclist, and she was kind of like, well, I met Lenny through dancing, and he did the kind of dancing. And over here, he was into wine, and he did wine things. And then the whole family thing here with 50 years and the cars. And one of the other places that we used to see Lenny is when we went to the East Lansing Film Festival. And he really liked that kind of thing too. And we'd sometimes run into him at the 10-pound fiddle. So he was a man with an awful lot of varied interests that I won't say he had a specific set of friends for each interest, but I'm thinking that there's a bunch of movie buffs someplace that are all going on, you know?
He was also very active, and I didn't know him through this, but he was very active in the township, Meridian Township.
Oh, yeah.
To all sorts of township meetings.
Yeah, so, you know, we're talking this, Lenny was just such a faceted person. That's just an observation.
And the township meetings are televised. Probably more people saw them at those. And, you know, I was at one transportation meeting that Tim was at. and I think Lenny was there too. And one lady who didn't like bicyclists was giving her spiel, but then Lenny gets up and she goes, "Oh, it's Lenny. Okay, correct me, Lenny." So, yeah.
You had a memory like a bear trap.
Mm-hmm.
He could remember my schedule months in advance, and you'd ask me questions about my schedule. You remember my wife's running schedule? She was a very big supporter of my wife's running. He remembered what he paid for his first bikes in 1972 to the penny.
Oh,
I don't know
Lenny?
if any of you had experienced that, or what a memory.
Yeah. Well, okay, Lenny didn't carry a wallet. His money was in a Ziploc bag, and he loved to have $2 bills to spend.
No,
I forget the reasoning for that. For tips, that's right. Yeah. Glad to meet you here, Mr. Pena. Or I'm sorry, Commissioner Pena.
Oh.
Your sister beat you here, you know. This is Bob Pena. He's county commissioner for Lansing. And do you want to say anything, Bob?
And East Lansing and Lansing Township too.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think of the vehicle that's used to carry the bags.
Sack or the truck, yeah.
The luggage truck. Yeah, I don't know, just being in a luggage truck with them. Yeah, I guess interesting humor. About what might be in the bags. Yeah. And you'd say with very straight, still voice, you know. There was already a window there.
Well, we have the room for another hour, so if you want to stay and help us whittle down the food and drink, that will be welcome. You know, you need to leave, fine, but I really appreciate you showing up. It's, you know, I think for us who did the organizing, it's a pretty good feeling to memorialize my.
Thanks for organizing.
Thank you.
My brother.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop you.
We got almost